everyone, Katt Chatt here, and welcome to my Christmas review.
Christmas movies. The good ones get you all cozied up for the holiday, and the bad ones either crack you up or make you embarrassed to even be a member of the same species as the being who made it. No matter what festive movie you like, it's sure to get you in the mood for the holidays.
And today's movie for me is no different. Ladies and gents, The Year Without a Santa Claus, 1974.
Based on the book written in 1956, this Rankin-Bass classic is one of many from this studio that, while made on a tight budget, still did their best to tell entertaining and snuggly Christmas stories, or other stories that still tickle our fancy. While not all their movies are Christmas related, those classics are still what they're best known for. This particular one may not have been its most popular ones to start with, but it has gained a cult following over the years. Now, without further ado, on with the review. We begin by meeting Mrs. Claus, played by Shirley Booth, who begins to tell us the story of the time Santa vowed to take a holiday, quoting the book up to a point. Fun fact, this was apparently the last thing Shirley voiced before she retired from voice acting. Then we get the first deviation from the book, where the doctor brings up that nobody cares about Christmas anymore, which pushes Santa further into wanting some time off.
Shivering shakes. Probably never got over the case of near pneumonia you picked up last year gallivanting around the world in your open sleigh. And for what? Just to deliver presents to a bunch of folks who don't give a hoot in the first place. Nobody cares a hoot and holler for you or Christmas. Oh, by the way, Merry Christmas to you.
Now, Santa, I hope you're not going to take any of that to heart.
No, Ma, the man's right. I had that same feeling myself, but I just wouldn't admit it. Nobody really cares anymore. And besides, the doctor says I'm really not up to snuff.
And of course, this Santa is played by Mickey Rooney, who plays a much better Santa than he does a Japanese person. While I completely understand extending the story for the sake of making the book into a film, immediately after this scene we are shown the papers pushing this story in the song montage. This is confusing, because even later in the film it's shown that the children of Southtown, and presumably a sizable number of the child population globally, don't care about Christmas and don't believe in Santa Claus. While it is shown that some of the adults, like Iggy's father, still believe in Santa, why would the papers push this story if most folks don't believe in Santa anymore? You could argue that it was taken as a joke story, something to lighten up the mood before Christmas, ironically enough. It's still kind of a plot hole. It doesn't even bother me a lot, but it is basically my job in this video to point things out like this. The song itself is good enough. It's catchy and captures the Christmas feel. We see the elves get the orders to cover the shelves as Christmas is cancelled this year. Later on, we see two elf characters, also not in the book, Jingle Bells and Jangle Bells, receiving a call from Mrs. Claus about meeting her at the main house.
Oh, hi, Mrs. Claus. Yes, Mrs. Claus. Oh, okay, Mrs. Claus. Sure thing, Mrs. Claus. Right away, Mrs. Claus.
Who was that?
Oh. That was... Come on.
We then cut to Mrs. Claus trying on Santa's hat, and then singing a song about how she could be Santa this year.
Anyone can be Santa. Why can't a lady like me? I admit I'm underfed, but with a pillow from the bed, I could be Santa Claus.
After realizing her plan wouldn't work, despite the fact that the two elves didn't recognize her until after she turned around, she goes to plan B, sending Jingle and Jangle off to a town to find a source of Christmas spirit and goodwill. They're put on Vixen and off they travel, while Mrs. Claus goes back to tend to Santa and the chores. Speaking of Santa, he was woken up from the noise outside and asks what's up, with Mrs. Claus saying it's just the reindeer playing around. He asks if he's doing the right thing, and the missus reassures him. Then he instantly realizes she's up to something.
Okay, what are you up to, Ma?
Me? Up to something? Oh, ridiculous. Do I look like I'm up to something?
No, you don't look like you're up to something, but whenever you look like you're not up to anything, you're up to something. What are you up to, Ma?
She says it's nothing, but then mumbles to herself about Jingle and Jangle, which obviously concerns Santa, and he makes her tell him where they are. She tells him that they went to find Christmas Spirit with Vixen, which makes Santa get up and go after them, making remarks about the most dangerous obstacle in their path, the Miser Brothers.
The Miser Brothers? Oh, dear. Oh, I forgot all about those two.
Of all the fool things for them to do, why, if Snow Miser doesn't freeze him just for the fun of it, his devil of a brother will put the heat on him for sure.
He goes off to help them, riding on Dash's back, and we all hear a little more about the Miser Brothers.
The Miser Brothers, what a pair. Snow Miser, who controls the northern part of the world, trying to turn everything to icicles, and his nasty brother trying to keep the south so hot with nary a snowflake a year.
These two also were not in the original story, but added to help extend the film. But that didn't stop them from being the most popular aspect of it. These two are the reason why this movie gained popularity. Even if it wasn't as much as the studio's other films, we can definitely see why later on in the movie. We then see Jingle and Jangle flying in the clouds in the path of the brothers' crossfire. Heat Miser spots them and causes them to start falling out of the sky, only to be saved by Vixen. They soon land in Southtown and begin their journey finding Christmas Spirit. Their first two encounters didn't go so well, first being pulled over by a cop on a bicycle, and second by a woman who doesn't take kindly to their dog, aka Vixen, as a newly disguised reindeer. Then Santa comes into the scene and runs into the officer, who tells him about the elves.
We better find them quick, poor little guys. Must be scared to death.
I'm scared to death.
Jingle and Jangle figure since the adults don't seem to help, maybe the children will. So they climb down to find some. They see a school, but Vixen gets too hot, so they rest her under the shade of a tree and go on to the school. They soon come across some kids at recess and approach them like it's totally normal. And the kids talk to strangers, which is also totally normal. And the kids say they don't believe in Santa and point out that Vixen is getting taken by the dog catcher, which makes the two elves run off after her. We then follow Ignatius Iggy Thistlewhite, one of the kids from before, to his home, where he runs into a stranger hiding behind a tree. Just kidding, it's Santa. But Iggy doesn't know that. Why isn't he more cautious of a strange man hiding behind a tree, just waiting for him? Before continuing, I'd like to say that Iggy here is a lot more akin to how a child would talk and act than his book counterpart.
Hey, you're dressed up like a couple of Christmas elves. Haven't you heard the news? Santa's taking a holiday.
Shucks now, fellows. Gosh, good gracious. Christmas is Christmas, cried Ignatius. And everyone tells me whom I've met it's a day to give as well as to get.
That's not how children talk unless they're goofing around. Also, while Iggy in the book was apparently 6 years old, the makers of this movie made the wiser decision of making him a bit older, and thus a tad more believable in his actions than his book counterpart. Again, mainly because of how he talks here. Anyway, Santa asks him about Jingle and Jangle, going by the name Claus. He then sneezes, which gets Iggy's mother involved, and she invites this strange man inside to care for his cold. Does no one ask questions about child safety? Yes, Iggy said he was a friend, but he just met him, and you've never seen him before. Ask questions, darn it! Iggy's mother gives him some tea, and the topic of discussion soon turns to Santa and his existence.
Heck, I don't believe in Santa Claus anymore. That's kid stuff. You don't believe in Santa Claus, do you, Dad?
Why, yes. Matter of fact, I do.
How about you?
Me? Why, of course I do.
I believe in Santa Claus. Like you believe in love, just believe in Santa Claus and everything he does.
Wipe that question from your mind. Yes, he does exist.
Just like love, you know he's there, waiting to be missed.
I know in this universe Santa is real and all, but telling people not to ask questions in order to seek answers is not how you foster intelligence, mate. Sure, you want folks to believe in you, but you get there by letting them seek the answers to their questions, and then it's up to them to ultimately decide if they want to believe in you or not. Anyways, Santa asks if Iggy knew where the elves went, and that makes Iggy remember that they went to the dog pound after Vixen. Santa leaves a top dasher, which the Thistlewhites see and realize who their guest was. Iggy desires to help, and his father suggests that he goes to the mayor for help, and happens to meet Jingle and Jangle while there, who received the same advice from the dog catcher. We cut to the mayor's office, who's laughing his butt off at everything they've told him. They're not getting through to him, but then comes this little interlude.
Oh, come on, son. What kind of fool do you think I am? You ain't got the chance of a snowball in Southtown of convincing me 1/10 of your story's on the level.
A snowball in Southtown? What kind of chance is that?
Not very good. It never snows here.
Well, not in the last 100 years. Hey, I've got an idea. You elves can work magic and all that. You conjure up a good old-fashioned white Christmas for us right here in Southtown, and I'll buy every word you say.
After agreeing to the seemingly impossible deal and leaving, the mayor breaks into song about it snowing. Then we cut to Santa freeing Vixen.
I've paid your fine. We'll be going home now.
A real reindeer. How do you like that? Aren't they supposed to be up north?
That's why she's so sick. She can't take this warm weather. I've got to get her home. What am I going to do about those two? Now, don't you worry, Vixen. I'm going to take care of you first.
We then cut back to Iggy and the elves racking their brains on how to make it snow in the south. Jingle then gets the idea to get help from Mrs. Claus and meet with her later that night. Their first destination being the Ice Castle, home to one half of everyone's favourite duo in this movie, the previously mentioned Miser Brothers.
Here he comes now, the big hand.
I'm Mr. White Christmas. I'm Mr. Snow. I'm Mr. Icicle. I'm Mr. Ten Below.
This hammy delight is Snow Miser, voiced by the late Dick Shawn, who obviously did an amazing job at bringing the snowy sauce box to life. We'll talk about his brother in a bit, along with why they're so popular, but back to the plot for now. They consult Snow Miser about making it snow in Southtown, but he says he can't, as it's in Heat Miser's territory, and any snow sent that way gets melted. He agrees to make it snow on the condition that Heat Miser gives the go-ahead. We then cut to the volcano lair of everyone's favourite Carolina Reaper, Heat Miser.
I'm Mr. Green Christmas. I'm Mr. Sun. I'm Mr. Heat Blister. I'm Mr. 101.
Voiced by the now late George S. Irving. George does an equally amazing job at bringing Heat Miser to life, and managed to live long enough to play him again in another Christmas special, which was planned for this review, but due to time constraints we will have to tackle later. Their performances, along with their songs, have made the Miser Brothers the highlight of this movie, and more than a few fans have formed celebrating these two. Artists, singers, casual fans, like myself, Heck, even a rapper at some point.
You must be crazy, lady. What you think, that this a game? You think I'm playing with you? Do you even know my name? H-E-A-T-M-I-S-E-R, the king of the heat. I made the sun a superstar. And here you are requesting snow in the south. How about you open wide and put your foot in your mouth?
After discussing some Santa rebranding, as to him it's unfair that Santa is so snow-oriented while not giving heat the light of day. Hey, there's always Santa Koala.
Santa Koala, off in a flap like a mad cockatoo.
Mrs. Claus asks if Heat Miser will let it snow for one day in the south. Heat Miser says no, but then says he'll agree under the condition that he's given the North Pole, which of course they have to settle with a phone call.
Snowy, this is Mrs. Claus.
Hi there, Sugar Plum. How'd you make out with a hothead?
I heard that, you snowball.
Oh, my goodness. Speak of the devil.
Boys, now please, don't fight.
Well, if I can't have a little fun, I might as well leave.
Your brother agreed to let it snow in the south.
He did?
Of course, there has to be a small concession on your part.
Oh, really? But what does a flaming fool want this time? The North Pole?
Yes, as a matter of fact.
What?
Some arguing later, Mrs. Claus has had her fill of hurdles and decides to go over their heads to get what she wants. And they leave to visit Mother Nature herself. Does that make Mrs. Claus a Karen? They soon arrive in her garden and have an audience with Mother Nature at her cottage. With a firm persuasion from their dear mother, the Miser brothers agree to let it snow in Southtown and have a spring day at the North Pole, which, thinking about it, wouldn't do a whole lot, considering it's the North Pole. Speaking of the North Pole, Santa helps Vixen rest up, and then finds a note left by the missus explaining she went to meet with the elves. Relieved that they'll be okay, he sits in his rocking chair and takes a nap for his cold. We then cut to Southtown, where it's snowing, much to the amazement of the townsfolk. And considering that they didn't have snow for a century, they had no means of snowproofing anything, and thus for one day, pipes froze over, roofs collapsed, and cars froze over in the sudden cold snap. Merry Christmas! Mrs. Claus and the elves give Santa the good news about everyone giving him time off, and he goes to sleep. He really didn't need their permission to take the day off, but whatever. The message spreads across the world, and children from all over decide to send him gifts this year. They all work hard to get their gifts to Santa on time, and they soon start arriving.
What's this? Why, it's a letter for me. Dear Santa.
I'll have a blue Christmas without you. I'll be so blue thinking about you.
This song is pretty lovely, and the children singing it do such a good job. Honestly, it's one of my favorite songs from this movie. This number, along with all the gifts he has been given, helps convince Santa to forego his holiday and get ready to make his rounds, no longer feeling sick. We're treated to a jolly Christmas song as he rides through Snowtown. Christmas Day comes with excitement, and it ended on the notion that Santa won't miss a Christmas again. And that was the year without a Santa Claus. While the animation of Rankin Bass films has always been low budget, that didn't stop this film from being a simple, charming little slice of the holiday. The characters were well written for the most part, and the vocal cast did an excellent job. The additions they made to the original story may have seemed ultimately pointless in the long run. They were in no way a drag to get through, especially the shenanigans of the Miser brothers. Most of the songs were alright, but speaking personally, Believe in Santa Claus drags them down a little bit. Overall, this was a sweet and heartwarming little movie I'd gladly watch again for the heck of it. While I was going to do 2 more films in this video, sadly due to time constraints, personal issues, and my very bad habit of procrastination, those 2 are going to be pushed back to more appropriate times. So it is going to be 3 separate reviews instead of one big one, but that's alright. Hopefully you can't wait for the last 2/3 of these shenanigans. See ya!
Just admit it, you're as common as a Coke can, pathetically as intimidating as a snowman. You gotta go, man, Frosty needs his hat back. Go find the lunchbox,
Well,
you can be the ice
I guess you
pack.
got a little talent, cause you talk a big game, but you can call me Smokey Bear because I'm stomping out this flame. My avalanche will bury you in mountains of snow, and now I'm writing you out because to me you're just a typo.